The first thing Karen Whitman said wasn't "excuse me" or "welcome aboard." It was louder than the cabin hum, sharp enough to cut through it. "You need to step out of this section. Right now." Heads turned. A pause rippled through first class like a held breath. Marcus Reynolds didn't move. He sat upright in seat 1A, shoulders squared, one hand resting lightly on the armrest, the other near his daughter's knee. Lily Reynolds froze beside him, her fingers still curled around the strap of her backpack, eyes lifted but unsure where to land. Karen stood in the aisle, clipboard tucked against her chest like a shield. Her jaw was tight. Her smile didn't exist. The overhead lights caught the silver of her name badge as she leaned in, just enough to invade space, not enough to touch. "Sir," she said again, slower this time, louder. "First class isn't appropriate here." The word "appropriate" hung in the air. Marcus felt Lily tense. He felt it before he saw it, the subtle shift in her breathing, the way her foot stopped swinging. He didn't look at Karen yet. He looked at his daughter instead. "It's okay," he said quietly. Karen's eyes flicked to Lily, then back to Marcus. The look hardened. She straightened, projecting authority, the kind practiced in training videos and mirrored in airport corridors. "I need you to cooperate," she said. "We're already behind schedule." Marcus finally lifted his gaze. His expression was calm, not blank. Calm the way people get when they've learned that reacting too fast only feeds the wrong story. "Is there a problem with our tickets?" he asked. Karen exhaled through her nose, a sound almost like a laugh. Brian Caldwell appeared at her shoulder, tall, polished, hair combed back with neatness. He took in the scene in one glance, eyes skimming Marcus's hoodie, Lily's sneakers, the seat number glowing above them. "There's been a mix-up," Brian said, voice smooth. "Happens sometimes. We just need to sort it out." Marcus nodded once. "Then by all means," he said. "Sort it out." Karen didn't move. Instead, she glanced toward the galley. Melissa Grant lingered there, arms folded, watching. Eric Dawson stood near the bulkhead, posture loose, hand near his radio. None of them were rushing to check anything. They were waiting. Lily leaned closer to her father. "Dad," she whispered, "did we do something wrong?" Marcus felt something tighten behind his ribs. He kept his voice low. "No, sweetheart." Karen cleared her throat. "Sir," she said, "if you'll just gather your belongings, we can relocate you until this is resolved." "Relocate," Marcus repeated. "Where?" Brian gestured vaguely toward the back. "Coach has open seats." Marcus looked around. Champagne flutes clinked softly 2 rows up as a couple laughed at something private. The scent of citrus and leather hung in the air. He looked back at Brian. "We paid for these seats," he said. "Lily and I are assigned here." Brian's smile thinned. "We've had incidents lately. Fraud, unauthorized upgrades. We have to be vigilant." The word fraud landed differently. Lily's eyes widened. She looked at Karen now, really looked, searching her face for a sign this was a misunderstanding. Rachel Kim, seated across the aisle, shifted. Her phone was already in her hand, screen dark but angled. Daniel Moore leaned back in his seat behind her, watching without pretending not to. Marcus felt the eyes. He also felt the clock. Boarding had slowed. The plane felt smaller. Karen raised her voice a notch. "Sir, you're causing a disruption." The word disruption carried weight. Lily flinched at it. Marcus didn't. "I'm sitting in my seat," he said, "with my daughter." Karen's lips pressed together. She turned her head slightly and murmured something to Eric. He nodded once and took a step closer. "Sir," Eric said, tone rehearsed, "we just need you to comply for now." Lily's hand slid into Marcus's. It was cold. "Why are they talking like that?" she asked, barely audible. Marcus squeezed her fingers once. "Because they decided something before they spoke to us." Karen snapped her fingers, sharp. "Sir, last request." Marcus looked up at her fully now. He noticed the small twitch near her eye, the way she kept her weight on one heel, ready to pivot. He noticed how she never once asked to see the boarding pass again. "No," he said. The word was soft. It landed heavy. Karen's face flushed. Brian shifted, irritation flashing before control snapped back in place. Emily Parker stood near the galley door, eyes darting between faces. She was younger than the rest, uniform still crisp in a way that hadn't been worn down yet. She looked at Marcus's pass, tucked half visible in his pocket. She looked at Karen. "It's valid," she said, before she could stop herself. Karen's head snapped around. "Emily, stay in your lane." Emily swallowed. She didn't move. Rachel's phone lit up now. Camera rolling. Daniel's followed. A quiet click, then another. The cabin sound changed. Less chatter. More attention. Marcus felt it shift. He leaned closer to Lily. "This part is important," he said. "Watch what people do when they think no one's watching." Karen noticed the phones. Her voice sharpened. "Recording is prohibited." Daniel spoke up. "So is harassment." Brian turned toward him. "Sir, sit down." Daniel didn't. Rachel didn't either. Karen took a breath, long and visible. She straightened again, authority back in place. "Fine," she said. "Security protocol." Eric lifted his radio. That was when Lily spoke. Her voice trembled, but it carried. "Why don't you just check the computer?" Silence. Karen stared at her. For a fraction of a second, something flickered there. Then it vanished. "Because," Karen said, "sometimes computers miss things." Marcus felt the lie settle into the space like smoke. He met Brian's eyes. "You already decided," he said. "You just need us to move so you can say we agreed." Brian didn't answer. He didn't have to. Emily's hands shook as she slipped her phone into her sleeve, voice recorder already running. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. Eric's radio crackled once, sharp and loud in the quiet cabin, then went silent again. He didn't speak into it. He didn't need to. The message had already been sent by posture alone. Karen stepped back half a pace, just enough to look reasonable, just enough to make the aisle feel narrower. "Sir," Brian said, lowering his voice now, The way people do when they want to sound calm and end something quickly. Let's not escalate this. Marcus looked past him, toward the cockpit door, closed and indifferent. He thought of how many times he had heard that word, escalate, used like a weapon, a way to turn resistance into guilt. He felt Lily's grip tighten again. "You're the only ones escalating anything," Marcus said. "We're sitting, that's all." Karen laughed once, short and humorless. "You're being difficult on purpose." Rachel shifted in her seat. Her phone was steady now. She wasn't hiding it anymore. Daniel crossed his arms, jaw set. 2 rows up, the couple with the champagne had stopped talking. The man glanced back, confused, then uneasy. Karen lifted her chin. "Sir, I'm giving you one last chance to comply." Lily's eyes darted between faces. She felt the attention pressing in from all sides, the way silence can feel louder than noise. She leaned closer to her father. "Dad," she whispered, "are they going to make us leave?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He watched Karen's breathing, shallow and fast now. He watched Brian's fingers curl and uncurl at his side. He watched Eric's eyes flick to the cameras and away. "No one can make us do something we didn't do wrong," he said finally. Karen turned to Eric. "Escort them." Eric hesitated. Just a beat. Long enough for Emily to notice. Long enough for Rachel to say, "Are you serious?" Eric stepped forward anyway. "Sir, ma'am, please stand." Marcus stayed seated. Lily didn't move. "I'm not standing," Marcus said, "and you don't have cause to touch me." Eric's jaw tightened. "Don't make this physical. You're already making it physical," Daniel said from behind, "by threatening it." Karen spun. "Sir, I need you to mind your own business." Daniel didn't flinch. "This is everyone's business now." Karen opened her mouth to snap back, then stopped. She turned sharply toward the galley and motioned for Melissa. Melissa came forward, lips pressed tight. "What's the hold-up?" Melissa asked. Karen leaned in, whispering fast. Melissa's eyes slid to Marcus, then Lily. Her gaze lingered a fraction too long. She straightened. "We can't let this delay the flight," she said aloud. "Captain won't be happy." Marcus felt Lily's shoulders tense at the word captain. Authority stacked on authority, each one heavier than the last. He reached up and gently brushed her sleeve, grounding. Emily stepped forward again, voice quieter but firmer this time. "There is no discrepancy. I checked the manifest." Karen's head snapped toward her. "Emily, that's enough." Emily didn't stop. Seat 1A and 1B are correctly assigned. "There's nothing to resolve." Brian stared at her. "You're new." Emily nodded. "Yes, and I can read." A ripple went through the cabin. Someone in the back let out a low whistle. Rachel's phone zoomed slightly. Daniel smiled once, tight and brief. Karen's face flushed deep red now. She took a step toward Emily, invading her space the way she had Marcus's earlier. "Go back to the galley," she said through clenched teeth. Emily's hands trembled, but she didn't move. "No." That single word felt louder than Karen's earlier command. It landed wrong. Karen recoiled as if slapped. Brian stepped in, voice sharp. "This is insubordination." Emily's voice wavered, then steadied. "This is the truth." Karen turned back to Marcus, fury barely contained. "You see what you've caused?" Marcus met her gaze. "You did this." Eric shifted his weight. His radio crackled again. A voice murmured on the other end, indistinct. Eric covered it with his palm and spoke low. "We've got eyes on us." Karen glanced at the phones, at Rachel, at Daniel, at a teenager 2 rows back, now standing, recording openly. "Sir," Karen said, voice clipped, "you're being labeled non-compliant." Lily sucked in a breath. Her fingers went numb. Marcus leaned closer to her, his voice calm but firm. "Listen to me. Whatever happens next, you stay with me. Look at me, not them." She nodded, eyes shining but unblinking. Brian rubbed his temples. "This is spiraling." "Because you won't stop pushing," Rachel said. Melissa scoffed. "You don't understand protocol." Daniel shook his head. "Protocol doesn't override basic decency." Karen straightened again, drawing herself up like a line had been crossed. "Fine." Announcement. She turned toward the intercom panel near the galley. Her hand hovered for half a second before pressing the button. The cabin speaker crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen," Karen's voice rang out, overly controlled. "We are experiencing a delay due to a disruptive passenger in the forward cabin. We appreciate your patience as we resolve the situation." A murmur swept through the plane. Heads snapped toward Marcus and Lily. Lily's stomach dropped. She felt the weight of that word settle on her shoulders like something dirty. "That's a lie," Rachel said loudly. Karen ignored her. Marcus didn't move. He felt the shift. The way narrative can be turned with a sentence. He felt anger rise, hot and sharp, then he pressed it down. "Not yet." Emily stared at Karen, disbelief etched across her face. "You just lied to everyone." Karen shot her a warning look. Daniel stood up fully now. "You're misrepresenting the situation." Karen spun. "Sit down." "No." Silence fell again, heavier than before. Eric looked between Karen and Brian. Brian's confidence was cracking now, hairline damp with sweat. Karen turned back to Marcus, voice low and venomous. "You think you're clever. You think because people are watching, you win." Marcus met her stare. "This isn't about winning." "Then what is it about?" she snapped. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The cameras were still rolling. Emily's recorder blinked red inside her sleeve. Eric took a step back. Karen noticed. Her authority was leaking out through the cracks she had made herself. Lily whispered, "Dad, they're all staring." Marcus nodded. "Let them." He lifted his eyes, scanning the cabin. Faces tense, curious, uncomfortable, some angry, some ashamed. A collective awareness forming. "This plane hasn't even left the ground," he said quietly. "But you've already decided who belongs where." Karen laughed again, brittle. "Don't turn this into something it's not." Brian swallowed. Karen? She ignored him. Eric shifted again, putting space between himself and her now. Emily took a breath. This doesn't end the way you think it does, she said. Karen rounded on her. You don't know anything. Emily met her eyes. I know enough. Marcus felt the moment stretching, tightening like a wire. He squeezed Lily's hand once more. Hold on, he murmured. Something was about to break. The captain's door stayed closed, but the tension pressed toward it like heat. Karen Whitman stood beneath the intercom, chin lifted, eyes hard, as if daring the cabin to challenge the version of events she had just broadcast. Marcus Reynolds felt Lily's pulse racing through her fingers. He angled his body slightly toward her, a quiet barrier, though he knew barriers made of flesh meant little when authority decided to move. Eric Dawson cleared his throat. Karen, he said low. We should pause. Karen didn't look at him. Sir, she said to Marcus, you are now formally non-compliant. That has consequences. Marcus breathed in through his nose, slow and measured. He felt the weight of the word formal settle like paperwork already stamped. He kept his voice even. You used the intercom to lie. That has consequences too. Brian Caldwell stepped forward, palms out. Let's take a breath. Everyone. We can resolve this without making it worse. Daniel Moore let out a short laugh. You already made it worse. Melissa Grant's eyes flicked toward the phones. She leaned toward Brian, whispering, This is getting ugly. Rachel Kim raised her phone higher, framing Karen, Brian, Marcus, Lily. Her thumb hovered over the screen, then tapped. The quiet click felt louder than any announcement. Karen's gaze snapped to Rachel. Turn that off. Rachel didn't. She tilted her head, steady. No. Karen took a step toward her. Sir, ma'am, recording crew members is legal, Daniel cut in a public cabin. Karen's mouth opened, closed. She turned sharply to Eric. Remove the devices. Eric hesitated. His eyes darted to the aisle, to the cluster of raised phones now multiplying. A man across the aisle stood up, middle-aged, grey hair, jacket folded over his arm. This is wrong, he said. He hasn't done anything. Melissa snapped. Sit down. The man didn't. I won't. Lily felt the cabin tilt, not physically but socially, the way rooms change when people choose sides. Her chest felt tight. She leaned closer to her father. Dad, she whispered, I don't like this. Marcus nodded, his jaw set. I know. Karen pressed her lips together, a thin line. She turned to Brian, voice clipped. Call the captain. Brian hesitated. Karen. Call him. Brian swallowed and moved toward the galley phone. Emily Parker watched him go, eyes wide. She felt the recorder warm against her wrist. She had never imagined her first month would look like this. She had practiced smiles, safety demos, conflict de-escalation scripts. None of them covered watching a child get labeled a problem. Karen turned back to Marcus. This ends now, she said. Stand up. Marcus stayed seated. Lily stayed with him. Eric shifted again, then spoke quietly. Karen, there are too many cameras. Karen shot him a look. Do your job. My job is safety, Eric said. This doesn't feel safe. The word landed wrong. Karen stiffened. Don't question me in front of passengers. Daniel Moore stepped into the aisle, hands open. You escalated this. You can stop. Karen's voice rose. Sir, return to your seat immediately. No. A murmur rippled. Someone near the back clapped once, uncertain, then stopped. The sound echoed anyway. Brian returned, phone still in his hand, face pale. The captain is aware, he said. He wants this resolved quickly. Karen exhaled, sharp. Good. Marcus watched Brian's eyes. He saw fear there now, not of Marcus, but of optics. He leaned forward slightly. You've already decided how this looks, Marcus said. You just need us to move so you can say you fixed it. Karen laughed, brittle again. You think you're the victim here? Lily looked up, her voice small but steady. We are. Karen froze. For a moment, the words hung between them, fragile and sharp. Melissa scoffed. This isn't about feelings. Emily stepped forward, heart hammering. It is about facts, and the facts are clear. Karen rounded on her. I told you to go back. Emily shook her head. Her hands shook too, but she kept them visible. You lied. You called him disruptive. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't move. You did. Karen's face flushed deeper. Enough. Brian interjected. Emily, step away. Emily didn't. She met Marcus's eyes for a split second, then Lily's. She felt something settle in her chest, heavier than fear. I won't, she said. Rachel whispered. Good. Karen's control cracked. Eric, she barked. Eric took a breath. He didn't move. Karen stared at him. Do it. Eric's gaze slid to Lily, then back. He shook his head once. I'm not touching a kid. Silence slammed down. Karen's eyes widened. Brian looked at Eric as if seeing him for the first time. Karen straightened slowly. Fine. I'll document this. She pulled out her tablet, fingers moving fast. Marcus saw the screen flash with fields and drop-downs. He felt the familiar chill of false records being born. Daniel leaned in. You're falsifying a report. Karen didn't look up. You're interfering with crew operations. Rachel spoke loudly. Everyone can see what you're typing. Karen's fingers paused. She glanced up, eyes darting to the phones again. Then she resumed, jaw tight. Marcus felt Lily's nails press into his palm. He leaned closer. Look at me, he said softly. Count your breaths. She nodded, breathing shallow but steady. Brian rubbed his forehead. Karen, stop. She didn't. Emily took another step forward, voice shaking but clear. I heard you say he didn't look like he belonged. I heard you tell Melissa we'd clean this up fast. I recorded it. Karen's head snapped up. You did what? Emily swallowed. I recorded it. A gasp rippled through the cabin. Melissa stared at Emily, stunned. Brian's face drained of color. Karen laughed, high and sharp. That's illegal. Emily met her stare. So is discrimination. Karen lunged forward a half step, then stopped herself. Her eyes flicked to the intercom again, then to the cockpit door. She looked suddenly unsure. Brian grabbed her arm. Karen, this is done. She yanked free. No. Eric spoke, voice firm now. Karen, step back. Karen stared at him, betrayal etched across her face. You're siding with them? Eric didn't answer. He didn't have to. Marcus felt the moment cresting, a wave gathering weight. He leaned back, shoulders squared, voice low but carrying. You can keep digging, he said, or you can stop. Karen's eyes burned. You don't tell me what to do. She turned and pressed the intercom again. Ladies and gentlemen, due to continued non-compliance by a passenger, we will be requesting additional assistance. Boos broke out. Not loud, but unmistakable. Someone shouted, "That's a lie!" Daniel raised his voice. Play the video. Karen slapped the intercom off. She was breathing hard now. Sweat dotted her hairline. Brian looked around the cabin, at the standing passengers, the phones, the child gripping her father's hand. He saw it then. This wasn't contained. It never had been. Marcus felt Lily relax just a fraction as the room shifted again, authority bleeding out, truth seeping in through every crack. Hold on, he murmured once more. The wave was rising. The cabin felt smaller now, compressed by the weight of too many eyes and too much truth hanging in the air. Karen Whitman stood rigid beneath the darkened intercom panel, her authority no longer filling the space the way it had minutes ago. It clung to her now, brittle, exposed. Brian Caldwell looked from face to face, calculating, the way men do when they realize control has slipped beyond recovery. Eric Dawson took a step back, then another, placing distance between himself and Karen without saying a word. That silence spoke louder than any refusal. Melissa Grant pressed her lips together, arms folding tightly across her chest, her gaze darting toward the aisle where more passengers were standing now, phones lifted openly, unapologetically. Marcus Reynolds felt Lily's breathing slow, just slightly. He kept his posture steady, back straight, shoulders relaxed, the calm of a man who knew storms pass faster when you don't flail inside them. He could feel the moment stretching, the kind that either breaks people or exposes them. Karen broke first. "This is outrageous," she snapped, voice sharp but thinning at the edges. "You're all being manipulated." "By what, exactly?" Daniel Moore asked. "Reality?" A few soft laughs rippled through the cabin, not mocking, but relieved. The sound made Karen's jaw clench. She turned sharply to Brian. "Say something." Brian hesitated. His eyes flicked to Emily Parker, then to the phones, then to Lily. His mouth opened, closed. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Karen, maybe we should pause operations." "Pause operations," Karen repeated, incredulous. "You want to pause because one man refuses to move?" "One man and a child," Rachel Kim said. Karen shot her a look. "Stay out of this." Rachel didn't. She adjusted her grip on her phone. Too late. Karen's gaze snapped back to Marcus. You think you're making a point. You think this ends well for you. Marcus tilted his head slightly. I think it ends the way it should have started. With respect. Karen laughed again, but it sounded hollow now. Respect is earned. Marcus nodded once. So is trust. Karen's eyes flicked toward Lily again, then away. She straightened her uniform, smoothing it down like armor she hoped would still hold. Brian cleared his throat. The captain wants a report. Karen scoffed. I'll give him one. She turned toward the galley, tablet in hand, but Emily stepped into her path, heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Don't, Emily said. Karen stopped short, stunned. Move. No. Karen stared at her, disbelief morphing into fury. Do you have any idea what you're risking? Emily swallowed. Yes. Melissa stepped forward. Emily, think about this. Emily didn't look at her. I am. Karen's voice dropped, dangerous. You're done after this. Emily nodded, tears burning her eyes, but not falling. Maybe, but not today. A murmur rolled through the cabin, approval mixed with shock. Marcus watched Emily with something like quiet pride. He felt Lily shift beside him, watching the young woman with wide, intent eyes. Karen took a step back, then another. For the first time, she looked uncertain. She glanced at Brian, at Eric. Neither moved. Eric spoke, voice steady. Karen, we need to de-escalate. Karen laughed sharply. You're all turning on me. Brian exhaled, long and slow. You crossed a line. Karen's face flushed. I followed protocol. No, Daniel said. You followed your assumptions. Karen's mouth opened, ready with a retort. But nothing came out. She looked around, taking in the standing passengers, the raised phones, the child she had labeled a problem. The room no longer belonged to her. Marcus leaned forward slightly. You can stop now, he said again, or you can keep going. But either way, this is being seen. Karen's eyes burned. You don't know who you're dealing with. Marcus met her gaze, unblinking. Neither do you. The words landed with weight. Not a threat. Not yet. Just truth. Waiting. Brian's tablet buzzed in his hand. He glanced down, then up. His face paled further. The captain wants to speak to you, Karen. Now. Karen straightened, relief and irritation tangling. Good. She turned, but before she could take a step, Rachel spoke. Loud enough for everyone. Before you go, maybe explain why you called him disruptive. Karen froze. She didn't turn around. Explain why you never asked for the ticket again, Daniel added. Explain why you told them he didn't belong, Emily said, voice shaking, but clear. Karen spun back, eyes wild. Enough. The word cracked. It didn't command any more. It pleaded. Eric shifted again, placing himself between Karen and Marcus, without realizing it. Karen noticed. Her breath hitched. Brian stepped in front of her, lowering his voice. "Karen, stop." She stared at him. "You're siding with them, too?" Brian hesitated, then nodded once. "I'm siding with the truth." Karen looked around one last time, at Melissa, who wouldn't meet her eyes, at Eric, steady and immovable, at Emily, shaking but resolute, at Marcus, calm, at Lily, watching everything, absorbing it all. For a split second, something like fear crossed Karen's face. Then the cockpit door opened. The captain stepped out, tall, grey-haired, eyes sharp as he took in the scene in one sweeping glance. The standing passengers, the phones, the tension humming like a live wire. "What's going on?" he asked. Karen opened her mouth. Brian spoke first. "There's been a misrepresentation of events." Karen turned on him. "How dare you?" The captain raised a hand. "Karen, stop." Silence fell. "Absolute." The captain's gaze settled on Marcus, then Lily. He softened, just slightly. "Sir, ma'am," he said. "I'm sorry." Karen's head snapped toward him. "Captain, I said stop." Karen's shoulders slumped a fraction. The armor finally cracked. The captain looked back at the cabin. "Everyone, please remain where you are." Phones stayed up. Marcus felt Lily exhale, long and shaky. He squeezed her hand. "It's okay," he murmured. "We're almost there." Karen stared at the floor now, lips pressed tight, breath shallow. Brian stood rigid beside her. Melissa looked small. Eric stood firm. Emily felt her knees threaten to buckle, then steadied herself. The moment had tipped. Not into resolution. Not yet, but into something irreversible. The captain stood in the aisle, posture straight, hands relaxed at his sides. But his eyes missed nothing. He took in Karen Whitman first, then Brian Caldwell, then the cluster of raised phones, the passengers on their feet, the child pressed close to her father. He had seen disturbances before. He had never seen one like this. Karen found her voice again, thinner now, brittle. "Captain, this passenger has been refusing crew instructions." "And no," the captain said calmly, "not yet. I want to hear it from the beginning." Brian swallowed. Karen shifted her weight, glancing once more at the phones, at Emily Parker standing stiffly near the galley, her face pale but determined. "We were verifying seating assignments," Karen began, choosing her words carefully. "There was a concern." "A concern you never checked," Rachel Kim said. Karen shot her a look. "This is crew business." The captain didn't take his eyes off Karen. "It's passenger business now." "Continue." Karen's jaw tightened. "There have been recent incidents involving unauthorized access to premium cabins. We acted to prevent disruption." Marcus Reynolds felt Lily's hand squeeze his. He leaned slightly forward. "Captain," he said evenly, "my daughter and I boarded with valid tickets. We were seated. We were approached and told to leave without explanation. When I asked for clarification, I was labeled disruptive." The captain nodded once, eyes steady. "Thank you." Karen interjected. He refused to comply. The captain raised a finger. "Karen." She stopped. Emily took a breath. "Captain," she said, voice trembling but clear. There was no discrepancy. I checked the manifest myself. Seat 1A and 1B were correct. Karen spun toward her. You were told to stay out of this. The captain's gaze snapped to Karen, sharp now. Did you instruct a junior crew member to ignore a verified manifest? Karen hesitated. Brian stepped in, voice low. Captain. Emotions escalated. Emotions don't falsify facts, the captain replied. A murmur rippled through the cabin. Phones shifted, refocused. Daniel Moore's voice carried from behind. We heard the announcement. She called him disruptive over the intercom. He never raised his voice. The captain turned toward Daniel. Sir, did you witness this from the beginning? Yes. And you recorded? Daniel lifted his phone slightly. The whole thing. Rachel spoke up. So did I. Another passenger added, Me too. The captain closed his eyes for a brief moment, then opened them again. He looked tired suddenly. He looked human. Karen's breathing quickened. Captain, we can discuss this privately. No, the captain said. We can't. He turned back to Marcus and Lily. I'm sorry you were put in this position. Lily nodded, words stuck in her throat. Marcus spoke softly. She heard everything. The captain's jaw tightened. Understood. Karen took a step forward, desperation creeping into her voice. Captain, this is getting out of control. We need to restore order. The captain met her gaze. Order isn't silence. It's accountability. Brian's shoulders slumped slightly. Karen, he said quietly, maybe we should stand down. Karen stared at him. You too? Brian didn't answer. He didn't need to. Eric Dawson shifted, then spoke, voice steady. Captain, I did not feel comfortable in forcing removal. There was no safety threat. Karen whirled. That's not what you said earlier. Eric held her gaze. That's not what I felt earlier. The captain nodded slowly. Thank you for your honesty. Karen's face drained of color. She glanced around, searching for an ally. Melissa Grant stared at the floor. Emily stood frozen, heart pounding. She hadn't planned to speak again, but the words rose anyway. Captain, I also recorded audio. What was said before the announcement? Karen's head snapped up. You did what? The captain turned toward Emily. You recorded? Emily nodded. Yes. Karen laughed, sharp and panicked. This is absurd. We're being ambushed. No, Rachel said. You ambushed him. The captain held up a hand. Enough. Silence fell again, thick and absolute. The captain addressed the cabin. Everyone, thank you for your patience. I need a moment. He turned to Brian. I want the initial incident report. Brian hesitated, then handed over the tablet. The captain glanced at the screen. His brow furrowed. Karen watched his face. Every flicker reflected back at her. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The captain looked up. This report states the passenger was verbally aggressive. He wasn't, Daniel said. The captain nodded. I know. Karen took a step back. The captain scrolled. It also notes refusal to comply after multiple requests. He looked up at Marcus. Sir, did you refuse? Marcus met his eyes. I refuse to leave my seat without cause. The captain nodded again. Understood. Karen's voice cracked. Captain, if we don't enforce authority, we lose control of the cabin. The captain looked at her for a long moment. Authority without judgment is not control. It's abuse. A gasp rippled. Karen stiffened as if struck. Brian closed his eyes briefly. The captain handed the tablet back. I'm suspending further action until this is reviewed. Karen stared at him. You can't do that. I can, he said. And I am. He turned to the cabin. Please remain seated. Some sat. Some didn't. Phones stayed up. Karen's voice dropped to a whisper, raw. You're undermining me. The captain met her stare. You undermined yourself. Karen's shoulders shook once. She straightened quickly, pride flaring. This isn't over. The captain nodded. No, it isn't. He turned to Marcus again. Sir, for now, you and your daughter may remain seated. Lily's breath hitched. Marcus squeezed her hand. Thank you, he said. Karen stared at them, eyes burning. You think you've won? Marcus looked back at her, calm. This was never about winning. The captain glanced towards the cockpit. I need to make a call. Karen watched him go, panic creeping into the edges of her composure. She turned to Brian, voice low and urgent. You're letting this spiral. Brian shook his head slowly. No, I'm watching it finally make sense. Emily leaned against the galley wall, legs weak. Rachel lowered her phone for the first time, exhaling. Lily whispered, Dad, is it over? Marcus looked around the cabin, at the unresolved faces, the tension still humming. Not yet, he said softly. Karen stood alone now, surrounded by people, but separated from them, her authority stripped bare. She stared down the aisle, jaw clenched, as the weight of what she had set in motion pressed in from all sides. Something was coming, and she could feel it. The captain disappeared into the cockpit, the door sealing shut with a muted click that sounded final in a way no announcement ever had. The cabin remained suspended in a strange half-stillness, like a held note that refused to resolve. Karen Whitman stood in the aisle, rigid, arms tight at her sides, staring forward as if the plane itself might answer her if she kept looking hard enough. Brian Caldwell leaned against a seat back, his confidence leaking out through his posture. Melissa Grant remained near the galley, face pale, eyes unfocused, fingers twisting the edge of her uniform. Eric Dawson positioned himself slightly off to the side, no longer aligned with Karen, his stance protective but neutral, as if he were guarding the moment rather than enforcing anything. Marcus Reynolds felt Lily shift again, the adrenaline finally catching up with her. Her leg bounced, then stilled when he placed his hand gently over her knee. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His calm was deliberate, a counterweight to the chaos they had been pulled into. Karen broke the silence. "This is unbelievable," she muttered, not quite to anyone. One refusal, and suddenly the whole plane turns into a courtroom. Rachel Kim lifted her phone again. "Maybe because we saw the evidence." Karen shot her a glare. "You're loving this, aren't you?" Rachel didn't rise to it. She simply said, Daniel Moore spoke from behind Marcus. "This didn't have to be public." Karen laughed, bitter. "Then why is everyone filming?" "Because you made it public," Emily Parker said quietly. Karen turned slowly toward her. Her eyes narrowed. "You're still here?" Emily nodded. "Yes." Karen took a step closer, lowering her voice. "You think you're some hero." Emily's voice shook, but she held eye contact. "I think I did my job." Karen scoffed. "You betrayed your team." Emily swallowed. "I chose my conscience." Karen's lips curled. "That'll cost you." Emily nodded again. "Maybe." Brian cleared his throat. "Karen, let it go," Karen snapped back. "Don't tell me what to do." Brian flinched. He hadn't expected that sharpness. He straightened. "This is bigger than you now." Karen stared at him, stunned. "You're siding against me?" Brian looked around the cabin, at the watching passengers, the child gripping her father's hand. He spoke quietly. "I'm siding with the truth." Karen shook her head. Disbelief etched across her face. "You're all making a mistake." Marcus finally spoke again, voice low but carrying. "The mistake was deciding who mattered before you asked a single question." Karen's eyes flashed. "You don't get to lecture me." Marcus met her stare. "I didn't. You showed us." The words landed clean, without cruelty, and somehow that made them sharper. Karen looked away, jaw tight. Lily whispered, "Dad, why is she so mad?" Marcus leaned closer. "Because when people realize they're wrong, they either listen or they fight." Karen paced 2 steps, then stopped. She looked toward the cockpit door, as if waiting for rescue. Her breathing was shallow now. Melissa glanced at her, then at Brian, uncertainty written all over her face. Eric broke the silence. "Karen, maybe you should sit down." Karen froze. She turned to him slowly. "Sit down." Eric nodded. "Yes." For a moment, it looked like she might explode. Then she laughed, loud and brittle. "This is insane. You're telling me to sit down on my own plane." Eric's voice stayed steady. "I'm asking you to de-escalate." Karen's laugh died. She stared at him, then at Brian. Neither backed her up. She sank into an empty jump seat near the galley, movements stiff, pride the last thing holding her upright. The cabin exhaled as one, a collective release that felt almost physical. Emily closed her eyes for a second, grounding herself. Rachel lowered her phone slightly, then lifted it again when Karen began speaking. "You think this ends here?" Karen said, voice tight. "You think a few videos decide careers?" Daniel responded, "Careers are decided by actions." Karen scoffed. "Easy for you to say." The cockpit door opened again. The captain stepped out, phone no longer in his hand. His face was grave now, all traces of neutrality gone. Everyone straightened. Phones steadied. Karen stood abruptly. "Captain." He held up a hand. "Karen, remain seated." She froze, then obeyed, lowering herself back down slowly, eyes never leaving his face. The captain addressed the cabin. "Thank you for your patience. I've spoken with operations." Karen's fingers clenched around the edge of the seat. The captain turned first to Marcus and Lily. "Sir, ma'am, I want to formally apologize." Lily nodded, tears finally slipping free. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. Then the captain turned to the crew. What occurred here did not align with our standards. Karen opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Brian's shoulders sagged. The captain continued. "There will be a full review." Karen laughed, hollow. "A review. That's it." The captain met her gaze. "For now." Karen's eyes flicked to the phones again. For now felt like a cliff edge. Emily spoke softly. "Captain, there's also audio." Karen's head snapped toward her again. "Enough." The captain raised a hand. "I'm aware." Karen stared at him, realization dawning. "You've already heard it." The captain didn't answer directly. He turned back to the cabin. "We will not be departing until this is resolved appropriately." A murmur rose. Some relief, some surprise. Karen's face drained of color. "You're delaying the flight." "Yes," the captain said. "I am." Brian whispered. "Karen, this is serious." Karen looked around, seeing it now. The full scope of the room turned against her. She swallowed hard. Marcus felt Lily's breathing even out again. He leaned closer. "You're doing great," he whispered. She nodded, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her hoodie. Karen stared straight ahead, hands trembling despite her effort to steady them. The cabin had become something else entirely. Not a place of transit, but a reckoning. And it wasn't finished. The captain's presence changed the air, but it didn't soften it. If anything, it sharpened the edges. Karen Whitman sat rigid on the jump seat, spine straight, hands clenched so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. She stared forward, refusing to look at anyone, as if eye contact itself might confirm what she was trying not to accept. Brian Caldwell stood a few feet away, tablet hanging uselessly at his side. He kept glancing at the cockpit door, then back at the cabin, as though hoping instructions would arrive to tell him how to survive this moment. Melissa Grant hovered near the galley, silent now, the confidence she'd worn earlier stripped down to bare nerves. Eric Dawson stayed planted in the aisle, not guarding, not threatening, simply present, a quiet line that said this had gone far enough. Marcus Reynolds felt Lily's body finally relax against his arm. Her breathing slowed, though her eyes stayed alert, absorbing every movement, every tone. He knew this moment would stay with her. He hated that. He also knew it mattered that she saw what came next. Karen broke the silence again, her voice low but edged. "So what happens now?" The captain turned to her. "Now, we document the facts." Karen let out a short laugh. "Facts? You mean opinions caught on camera?" Rachel Kim raised her phone slightly. Cameras don't have opinions. Karen shot her a look. Neither do mobs. Daniel Moore shook his head. This isn't a mob, it's witnesses. Karen's jaw tightened. You think witnesses make you righteous? Emily Parker stepped forward before she could stop herself. They make you accountable. Karen's eyes flicked to her, sharp. You really don't know when to quit. Emily's voice wavered, but she held steady. I know exactly when not to. Brian finally spoke, voice tired. Karen, enough. She turned on him. Don't say my name like that. Brian met her gaze, something resigned in his eyes. Like what? Karen looked away, nostrils flaring. Like I'm already finished. No one answered that. The silence did it instead. The captain addressed the cabin again. We are coordinating with ground operations and corporate compliance. Corporate compliance. The phrase landed hard. Karen's fingers twitched. Marcus felt Lily shift. Dad, she whispered, what does that mean? It means people are paying attention. Now, he said softly. Karen laughed again, brittle. You think headquarters is going to take your side? The captain didn't react. They'll take the side of the evidence. Karen leaned back, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Evidence can be interpreted. Emily swallowed. Not when it's this clear. Karen snapped her head toward her. You should be careful. The captain intervened, voice firm. Karen, that's enough. Karen exhaled sharply and fell silent again. Her foot tapped once against the floor, then stopped when she noticed Eric watching her. The cabin felt like it was waiting for something else to drop. Phones stayed raised. No one sat fully back. The plane itself felt suspended, as if it knew it wasn't leaving yet. Brian's tablet buzzed. He glanced down, eyes widening lightly. He looked up at the captain. They want statements, he said. The captain nodded. Start with the passengers who recorded. Rachel didn't hesitate. Happy to. Daniel nodded. Same. Others chimed in quietly. Me too. I saw it. I heard it. Karen's breathing quickened. You're letting them write the story. No, the captain said. They already did. We're just reading it. Karen turned toward Marcus for the first time in minutes. Her eyes were sharp, searching. You're enjoying this. Marcus met her gaze, calm. I'm protecting my child. Karen scoffed. From what? From learning that silence is safer than truth, he said. The words hit harder than he expected. Karen looked away again, jaw working. Lily watched the exchange closely. She felt something settle in her chest. Not fear, not relief, but clarity. She leaned closer to her father. You didn't yell, she whispered. Marcus shook his head. You don't have to be loud to be firm. Karen heard that. Her shoulders stiffened. Brian shifted his weight, voice low. Karen, there's another issue. She didn't look at him. What now? Brian hesitated. The initial report you filed. Karen turned slowly. What about it? Brian swallowed. It doesn't match the recordings. Karen's eyes flashed. You checked it? Brian nodded. Yes. Karen stood abruptly, the jump seat snapping back. You had no right. The captain stepped between them. Karen. She froze, chest heaving. You're all acting like I committed a crime. Eric spoke quietly. You abused authority. Karen rounded on him. You don't get to judge me. Eric met her stare. I get to protect people. Karen stared at him for a long moment, then laughed, a hollow sound. You think you're better than me? Eric didn't answer. The captain turned to Brian. Secure the reports. Do not alter anything further. Brian nodded, face pale. Understood. Karen's eyes widened. Further? The captain held her gaze. We will review timestamps. Karen's breath caught. She glanced at Melissa, who looked away, at Eric, who stood firm, at Emily, whose hands were shaking again, but whose eyes never left her. You're all against me now, Karen said quietly. Emily shook her head. We're against what you did. Karen's lips trembled for a fraction of a second before she pressed them together hard. This isn't over. Marcus spoke, voice low but carrying. It rarely is. Karen's eyes flicked back to him, something unreadable there now. You still don't understand what you stepped into. Marcus tilted his head slightly. Neither do you. The captain checked his watch, then looked toward the cockpit. We're waiting on confirmation. Confirmation of what? Karen snapped. The captain didn't answer immediately. He turned to the cabin. Please remain patient. A soft murmur rippled through the passengers. No one moved. Lily felt the plane hum beneath her feet, engines quiet but alive. She realized she wasn't scared anymore. She was curious. She was watching adults reveal themselves. Karen paced 2 steps, then stopped, hands clenched. She looked smaller now, not physically, but in presence. The authority she'd worn like a coat lay discarded around her feet. Brian's tablet buzzed again. He read the message, then looked up slowly. Captain, he said, voice tight. Corporate is on the line. Karen's head snapped up. With who? The captain met her eyes. With leadership. Karen's breath stuttered. You called them already? The captain nodded. As required. Karen stared at him, realization finally settling in. This wasn't a delay. It was an escalation she couldn't control. Marcus felt Lily's fingers lace into his. He squeezed back gently. Hold on, he murmured. The wave was cresting. The word leadership landed like a weight in the aisle, heavy and unavoidable. Karen Whitman stood frozen, eyes locked on the captain, the color draining from her face in slow degrees. For the first time since boarding, she looked less like someone enforcing rules and more like someone realizing the rules were no longer hers to wield. Brian Caldwell's grip tightened around his tablet. He hadn't expected the call to come this fast. None of them had. Corporate moved slowly when it wanted to protect itself. When it didn't, the shift was sudden and brutal. Karen found her voice again, but it sounded different now, thinner, edged with disbelief. You escalated this without clearance. The captain didn't flinch. I followed protocol. Karen laughed, sharp and hollow. That's rich. Eric Dawson glanced toward the cockpit door, then back at Karen. Maybe protocol works both ways. Karen shot him a look that could have cut steel. Don't start pretending you're clean in this. Eric met her stare. I never pretended. The captain addressed Brian. Patch them through. Brian nodded, fingers moving with stiff precision. The tablet chimed softly, then went silent. He swallowed. They're on. Karen straightened instinctively, smoothing the front of her uniform, chin lifting as if muscle memory alone could restore authority. She glanced down the aisle, aware again of the phones, the witnesses, the child sitting quietly beside her father. Her jaw tightened. Brian held the tablet out. Speaker. The captain took it, his thumb hovering for a moment before pressing the screen. The cabin seemed to lean forward as one, every breath suddenly louder. This is Captain Reynolds on Flight 724, he said clearly. We have a situation involving crew conduct and passenger treatment prior to departure. A pause. Then a voice, calm, measured, filtered through the speaker. We're aware, Captain. Proceed. Karen's eyes flicked to the tablet. A bead of sweat traced her temple. The captain continued. A passenger was publicly labeled disruptive without cause. An announcement was made that misrepresented events. There are multiple recordings corroborating this. Another pause. Longer this time. Understood, the voice said. Is the passenger present? Yes. May we hear from him? Marcus Reynolds felt Lily's hand tighten in his. He hadn't expected that question yet. Not this soon. He rose slowly, deliberately, movements unhurried. The act of standing shifted the room again. Phones adjusted. A few people held their breath. He leaned slightly toward the tablet, keeping his voice steady. This is Marcus Reynolds. I boarded with my daughter. We were seated. We were told to leave based on how we appeared. When I asked for clarification, the situation escalated. Silence on the line. Then quietly. Thank you. Karen stared at Marcus now, something flickering behind her eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or suspicion, or fear finally catching up. The voice spoke again. Captain, we are initiating an immediate review. Please secure all reports and recordings. Brian nodded automatically, though no one could see him. Already done. Karen took a step forward. This is disproportionate, she said sharply. You're reacting to social pressure. The captain didn't turn to her. He kept his eyes on the tablet. Karen raised her voice. I was doing my job. The voice on the line cut through, calm but firm. Ms. Whitman, is that correct? Karen froze. Her mouth opened. Closed. Yes, she said finally. We will determine that, the voice replied. Karen's shoulders sagged a fraction. Melissa Grant looked like she might faint. She reached for the galley wall, steadying herself. Brian stared at the floor. Emily Parker stood very still, heart pounding so hard she felt lightheaded. She hadn't imagined this moment. She hadn't imagined being heard. The captain spoke again. There is also audio recorded by a junior crew member that captures pre-announcement remarks. Karen's head snapped up. You're using that too. The voice on the line didn't answer immediately. When it did, the tone was colder. Yes. Karen laughed, short and brittle. Of course you are. Marcus watched her closely. He saw the fight draining out, replaced by calculation, then by something closer to panic. He felt Lily lean into his side, seeking stability. He rested his hand over hers. The voice spoke again. Captain, please advise the cabin that the flight will be delayed pending resolution. Understood. The captain turned to the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We will be delaying departure while this matter is addressed. No one complained. A few people nodded. Some sat back down. Most kept their phones up. Karen looked around. Disbelief etched across her face. You're really doing this? Yes, the captain said. Karen's gaze landed on Marcus again. You think this makes you powerful? Marcus met her eyes, calm and unwavering. Power isn't what you think it is, she scoffed. Then what is it? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The voice on the tablet returned. Captain, we'll need statements from the involved crew. Karen stiffened. Here? Yes. Karen laughed again, but there was no humor left in it. In front of everyone? Transparency matters, the voice said. Karen's lips trembled for a split second before she masked it. This is humiliating. Emily spoke softly, almost to herself. So was what you did. Karen rounded on her, but the captain stepped in. Enough. Karen stopped, chest heaving. Brian cleared his throat. Karen, I need your report. She stared at him. Now? Now. Karen looked at the tablet again, at the unseen presence on the other end of the line, then at the passengers watching her unravel. Slowly, she exhaled and reached into her pocket, pulling out her device with shaking hands. Brian took it from her, fingers brushing briefly. She flinched, as if burned. Melissa whispered, Karen! Karen shook her head sharply. Don't. Eric remained silent, watching, absorbing, knowing this moment would follow all of them long after the plane landed. The captain addressed Marcus again. Sir, thank you for your composure. Marcus nodded once. I wanted my daughter to see how this should be handled. The captain glanced at Lily. She met his eyes, shy but steady. You're doing great, he said to her gently. She nodded, lips pressed together. Karen stared at the floor now, her reflection warped in the polished surface. The authority she had carried minutes ago lay dismantled around her, piece by piece, by her own choices. Brian looked up from the tablet, face pale. Captain, they're requesting immediate personnel action pending review. Karen's head snapped up. What does that mean? The captain met her gaze. It means this is no longer under your control. Karen's breath caught. For the first time, she looked genuinely afraid. Marcus felt the air shift again, the sense of something imminent, something irreversible drawing closer. He squeezed Lily's hand. Almost there, he murmured. The wave was about to break. Karen Whitman's fear didn't arrive all at once. It crept in through the cracks, thin and cold, settling behind her eyes as she realized the room no longer responded to her voice. She stood motionless near the jump seat, hands clasped too tightly, as if gripping herself together was the only way not to fall apart. The captain held the tablet lower now, his thumb resting near the darkened screen. He had heard enough. Everyone had. The cabin wasn't loud, but it was alive, vibrating with attention, with judgment, with something that felt larger than a delayed flight. Brian Caldwell broke first. "Captain, corporate is asking for clarity on immediate authority." Karen snapped her head toward him. "Authority? You're questioning my authority now?" Brian didn't meet her eyes. "I'm confirming where it stands," the captain answered for him. "At this moment, it stands under review." Karen's breath hitched. Under review sounded clinical, temporary. But the tone underneath it wasn't. It was final. Melissa Grant took a tentative step forward, voice barely above a whisper. "Karen, maybe we should just—" Karen rounded on her. "Don't!" Melissa stopped. Her eyes filled, but she looked away, shrinking back toward the galley. She had followed Karen's lead all morning. Now that lead had led them here. Eric Dawson shifted his stance again, arms loose at his sides, no longer defensive, no longer aligned, just present. He looked at Karen and spoke quietly. This didn't have to go this far. Karen laughed, hollow and sharp. That's easy to say now. Marcus Reynolds watched the exchange without expression. He had learned long ago that when people sense consequences, they scramble for alternate histories. He stayed still, grounded, aware that every movement he made now carried weight. Lily leaned into him, her head just touching his shoulder. "Dad," she whispered, "are they in trouble?" Marcus hesitated. He chose his words carefully. "They're being held responsible." Karen heard that. She turned slowly toward him, eyes burning. "You talk like you're above this." Marcus met her gaze. "I'm not above it. I'm in it. Just like you." Karen shook her head, almost pleading now. "You don't understand what this costs," Marcus replied quietly. "I understand exactly what it costs to stay silent." The captain straightened. He addressed the cabin again, voice steady and controlled. "Thank you for your patience. Corporate compliance has advised the following steps." Karen's shoulders tensed. "Effective immediately, all involved crew members will be relieved of active duty pending investigation." A sharp intake of breath rippled through the cabin. Melissa's hand flew to her mouth. Brian closed his eyes briefly. Karen went very still. "Relieved of duty," Karen repeated, voice flat. "You're grounding us." The captain met her stare. "Yes." Karen's composure fractured. "You can't do that without cause." The captain's tone didn't change. "There is cause." Karen laughed again, but it broke halfway through, splintering into something raw. "Because of him?" "Because of your actions," the captain said. Karen's gaze flicked back to Marcus, something close to hatred flashing there now. "You did this." Marcus didn't rise to it. He shook his head once. You did. Lily squeezed his hand harder. She felt the anger in the air, sharp and dangerous, but also the relief underneath it. Something bad had stopped growing. Brian cleared his throat. Captain, logistics will need to escort. Yes, the captain said. Upon landing. Karen's eyes widened. Landing. The word carried distance, time, exposure. Melissa whispered, Karen, I'm sorry. Karen didn't look at her. Eric spoke again, voice calm. We'll remain until ground staff takes over. Karen's hands trembled. She shoved them into her pockets, trying to hide it. Rachel Kim lowered her phone for the first time since the call, exhaling slowly. Daniel Moore let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. A few passengers sat back down, though none of them looked away. Emily Parker stood frozen, heart pounding so hard it made her dizzy. She had never seen authority collapse like this. She had never seen truth move so fast. She swallowed, eyes burning. Karen's voice cracked. This isn't justice. This is spectacle. Emily looked at her, finally speaking again. No. This is consequence. Karen stared at her, incredulous. You think this helps you? Emily nodded. I think it helps the next person. Silence followed that, heavy and complete. The captain turned toward Marcus again. Sir, before we proceed further, there is one more matter. Marcus inclined his head slightly. Corporate has requested confirmation of your identity for the record. Karen's head snapped up. Identity? Marcus felt Lily shift beside him. He placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. The captain continued. Your ticket information is verified, but compliance requires... Karen interrupted, voice sharp. Why does his identity matter now? The captain met her gaze. Because of the escalation. Karen laughed, brittle. You're still protecting him? Marcus spoke, calm and even. I've been transparent from the beginning. Karen scoffed. You sat there in silence. Marcus nodded. I listened. The captain looked at Marcus, something like curiosity in his eyes now. Sir, can you confirm your full name for the record? Marcus took a breath. The cabin seemed to lean forward again, sensing something just beyond the surface. Marcus Reynolds, he said clearly. The captain nodded. Thank you. Karen rolled her eyes. And? Marcus didn't move, didn't elaborate. Brian glanced at the tablet, then back up. There's a note here. Karen snapped. What note? Brian hesitated. It's flagged internal. The captain turned slightly. Read it. Brian swallowed. It indicates prior executive status. Karen froze. Executive? Marcus closed his eyes for a brief moment, then opened them again. He hadn't planned to say anything yet. He had hoped it wouldn't come to this. But the moment was shifting, whether he wanted it to or not. Karen stared at him now, suspicion sharpening. What does that mean? Marcus met her gaze, steady and unflinching. It means you should have checked before you spoke. The cabin went very still. Brian's voice trembled slightly, as he continued reading. It lists him as senior leadership. Karen's breath stuttered. That's not possible. The captain looked at Marcus, eyebrows lifting slightly. Sir? Marcus felt Lily's hand tighten again, this time not with fear, but anticipation. He didn't answer yet, not fully. He let the silence stretch, let the weight settle where it belonged. Karen's voice rose, sharp with panic now. Say something. Marcus looked at her calmly. I will. He glanced around the cabin, at the phones, the faces, the child beside him. Just not yet. The captain nodded slowly, understanding dawning. Karen stared at Marcus, the pieces beginning to align in her mind, her confidence finally collapsing under the truth she had refused to see. Marcus leaned slightly toward Lily, voice low and steady. Almost there. The wave had crested. Now it was pulling back, fast, and nothing in its path would stay hidden. Marcus let the silence do its work. It stretched across the cabin, heavy and deliberate, pressing against every face turned toward him. Karen Whitman stood frozen, eyes locked on his, the last fragments of certainty draining from her posture. Brian Caldwell stared at the tablet as if it had betrayed him. Melissa Grant looked like she might disappear into the galley wall. Eric Dawson didn't move at all. Marcus straightened slowly. Not to intimidate. Not to perform. Simply because the moment required him to stand. For the record, he said, voice calm and level. My name is Marcus Reynolds. A pause. Phones adjusted. Someone near the back stopped breathing for a second. I am the founder and chief executive officer of this airline. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They landed. Karen's knees buckled slightly before she caught herself. Her mouth opened, then closed, like her body was rejecting what her ears had heard. Brian's face went grey. Melissa let out a soft, involuntary sound. Eric's eyes widened, then dropped, a single nod of understanding passing through him. The captain exhaled slowly, something like relief crossing his face. Understood, sir. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't change his tone. That steadiness was what made it impossible to ignore. I boarded today as a father, he continued. Not as a title, not as authority. I sat down with my daughter. I followed the same process as everyone else on this plane. And within minutes, we were treated like a problem that needed to be removed. Lily stood beside him now, her small hand wrapped tightly around his. She looked out at the cabin, eyes bright, unafraid. Karen shook her head, disbelief breaking into panic. You didn't say anything. Marcus looked at her. You didn't ask. A murmur rippled through the passengers. Rachel Kim whispered something under her breath. Daniel Moore stared openly now, a slow smile forming, not of triumph, but of vindication. Marcus turned slightly, addressing the cabin as a whole. What happened here wasn't about seating. It wasn't about procedure. It was about judgment. Quick, careless judgment dressed up as policy. He turned back to the crew. You labeled me disruptive because I didn't comply with something you couldn't justify. You announced a lie. You documented another, and you did it in front of my child. Karen's voice cracked. I didn't know who you were. Marcus met her eyes. That's the point. The cabin was silent. Not the tense silence from before, but something heavier, more reflective. The captain cleared his throat. Sir, corporate has confirmed your authority. Marcus nodded once. Thank you. He turned back to Karen, Brian, Melissa, and Eric. His voice didn't harden. It didn't need to. Effective immediately, you are relieved of your duties on this flight pending termination review for ethical misconduct. Karen flinched, as if struck. You're firing us here? Marcus nodded. Yes. Brian swallowed hard. On what grounds? Marcus answered evenly. Abuse of authority, misrepresentation of facts, and discriminatory conduct. Melissa covered her face with her hands. Karen stared straight ahead, tears finally spilling despite her effort to hold them back. Emily Parker stood frozen near the galley, shock and relief colliding inside her chest. Marcus turned to her. Emily. She straightened instinctively. Yes, sir. Thank you for doing the hardest thing when it mattered most. Her eyes filled. She nodded, unable to speak. You'll be reporting directly to Flight Operations Leadership effective immediately, Marcus continued. Your actions today reflect the standards this airline claims to uphold. A few passengers began to clap, not loudly, not for show, just enough to acknowledge what courage looked like. Marcus turned back to Lily. You okay? She nodded, eyes shining. I'm proud of you. That was the only reaction he allowed himself to feel. The captain addressed the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, the situation has been resolved. We will resume preparations shortly. No one rushed back to their routines. Phones stayed up. Eyes stayed fixed. Karen found her voice one last time, brittle and hollow. You humiliated us. Marcus shook his head slowly. No. You humiliated yourselves. I just refused to protect the lie. Security instructions were quietly relayed. The dismissed crew stepped back, stripped of authority, waiting now instead of commanding. Marcus sat down again, the movement unremarkable, deliberate. Lily leaned into his shoulder. Around them, the cabin slowly settled, but something fundamental had shifted. People weren't just passengers anymore. They were witnesses. As the plane prepared to taxi, Marcus felt Lily relax fully for the first time. She rested her head against him, eyes closed, safe. Sometimes, he thought, leadership doesn't look like standing at the front. Sometimes it looks like refusing to move when you know you belong. If this story moved you, take a moment to like and subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments with 3 words. Truth always wins.